Yeah, law enforcement in New York City bracing for demonstrations over former President Donald Trump's arraignment just hours from now.
One report indicates that he will face 34 felony counts. However, the indictment remains under seal. Fox News sources say he is not expected to be put in handcuffs.
That's right. Fox News senior correspondent Laura Ingle joins us live from Lower Manhattan, just outside the courthouse, where about 6 or 7 hours from now, Laura, it is going to be a circus.
It certainly is, and it certainly already is happening now. We've got tents of media, reporters and cameras, and security extremely tight. Just behind me in the last few hours, we've been here since 3 o'clock in the morning, and we've seen another row of barricades put up behind me outside of this courthouse. And to my right, there is a line of people who have been camped out since yesterday afternoon. At 8 a.m., the first several groups of people will get a ticket to be inside of the courtroom for this historic arraignment of Donald J. Trump. And as you mentioned, we are just hours away. And as Ainsley mentioned, Mr. Trump arriving at Trump Tower Monday afternoon, waving at his supporters, lots of police presence there. We are now expecting to see him to arrive at the Manhattan Criminal Court building sometime around 1 p.m. this afternoon ahead of his 2:15 arraignment. Now, the court proceedings will not be televised, and only still photos will be permitted. This after the defense argued it will create a circus-like atmosphere at the arraignment, raise unique security concerns, and is inconsistent with President Trump's presumption of innocence. Law enforcement, including the NYPD and FBI, working to make this process as smooth and safe as possible. The Secret Service, as we know, will accompany Trump at all times, and that includes it processing, fingerprinting, and if a mugshot happens. He is not expected to be handcuffed. Protesters and supporters of Trump lining the streets outside of Trump Tower yesterday, where the former president is right now after arriving from Mar-a-Lago. More are expected here in Lower Manhattan. New York City Mayor Eric Adams urging protesters yesterday to keep it peaceful today.
New York City is always ready. While there may be some rabble-rousers thinking about coming to our city tomorrow, our message is clear and simple. Control yourselves. New York City is our home, not a playground for your misplaced anger.
Now, as we have been reporting, the exact charges are still under seal. Trump's legal team is already planning to file a motion to dismiss the case. Trump will first turn himself in to Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg before reportedly facing the more than 30 criminal charges, one expected to be a felony. His attorney ready to fight. Listen.
There'll be a host of motions we're going to make, including, I'm telling you right off the bat, a motion to dismiss based on selective prosecution, prosecutorial misconduct. There is zero chance where Donald Trump is pleading to anything here. He committed no crime. He committed no wrong, not a misdemeanor, not a felony, not a traffic ticket. There is nothing here. I still can't believe this is going to survive our vigorous motions to dismiss.
And now we've learned that there will be yet another attorney involved in his defense. Yesterday, we learned that attorney Todd Blanche, who's a former federal prosecutor and considered a top white-collar attorney, will be part of the legal team. So we are now just counting down the hours, waiting for that motorcade to arrive.
Yeah, he successfully got Paul Manafort's case dismissed. So many are wondering if that's why Trump brought him on the team.
Yeah. Hey, Laura, so he's not going to have handcuffs, not going to be put in a jail cell, and no mugshot. Is there a possibility that could change? Because I read that the judge is going to go through pre-trial stuff first before he decides whether or not to do it. Or was that already decided by Mr. Bragg, the DA?
Right. You know, we've been hearing so much back and forth in the last few hours since overnight about the mugshot, about how these proceedings are going to go. Some of the timelines have changed, but we just simply have to wait. We have to wait until everything unfolds, and we'll be here to watch it all.
All right, Laura, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great reporting through the night.
The reason for handcuffs, they say, is because if the defendant is a flight risk,
right,
or if a threat to the DA or personnel inside the courtroom, but neither applies here because the former president's protected at all times by the Secret Service.
He's surrounded by a posse.
Correct.
So it looks like the president, as right now, has raised $8 million since the indictment's been announced. We don't have the details of the 34 counts. It's rumored to be 34 counts, but he is expected to speak tonight and have almost a jubilant approach to it, a positive approach to it.
Hundreds of people there at Mar-a-Lago.
Right. I think they expect, what, 500? I think it's going to be very interesting, too. Are they going to motion to dismiss the judge? I'm sure that'll be rejected. Motion to dismiss Alvin Bragg. We'll see how that goes. And a motion to make sure there's no gag order. That's going to be interesting. I think there's, if you say he can't speak about the case, in a way, I think on some level, his attorneys might be happy about that, because then they can control the narrative and just focus on what he needs to beat it, as opposed to worrying about what the president's going to put on Truth Social or say on the stump.
Well, see, and Joe Tacopina last night, apparently on the Sean show, said that a gag order is not going to happen. That could be just wishful thinking, but keep in mind the former president has already badmouthed the DA and the judge in this case, and the judge can do anything he wants. Ultimately, though, if there is a gag order, it would keep the former president from talking about the case, and then he could actually talk about stuff like running for president. CNN across the street did a poll, and 76% of Americans say that politics did play some sort of a role in the indictment. But here's what's interesting. While 76% say it was politically based or somehow, 60% of Americans approve of the indictment. 62% of independents approve, but only 21% of Republicans. What's interesting is, since the indictment was announced, Trafalgar just did a poll, and Donald Trump's support rocketed up. Now it went from 43 to 56%. Ron DeSantis went down 10 points, and Liz Cheney is suddenly in third place. She was at 5%, now she's at 10%. 74%
What
of
poll is that, Trafalgar?
The Trafalgar poll. 74% say Republicans. 74% of Republicans, so three quarters, are more likely now to vote for Donald Trump in the primary because of this.
Yeah, because they think it's politically motivated. The story that broke last night was Michael Isikoff. He's the American journalist, works now for Yahoo News. He was the author of the Russian roulette book. But he was saying that he has a tip that Trump will be placed under arrest today, and informed that he has been charged with 34 felony counts. We were thinking one felony count. He's saying all 34 counts will be felonies for falsification of business records.
Right.
The reason bumped up to a Class E felony, which is the lowest level of felony in New York, because Bragg says that Trump was intending to conceal another underlying crime. And under New York State Penal Code, a Class E felony can result in prison terms of up to 4 years.
Right, but here's the crazy thing. How do you do a poll on what do you think about the indictment when you don't know what's in the indictment and you have an opinion on it? It's bizarre.
We don't know what's in it.
Yeah, number two is on the felony counts for falsifying business records. It's crazy. There's no plaintiff. There's no bank that says he screwed me. There's no building that's not built. There's nobody is complaining except for an attorney general and a district attorney that said, I'm going to run on convicting Donald Trump on something. Right. And they just want to import over his records. They get his tax returns. They look at it, and they find him $1 million in a case that he lost in civil court. But they say that criminal court always has precedence over civil court. So they try him in civil court. They get some information, and then they reportedly are about to enhance a criminal court case. So I think there's a lot to fight here. And in the back of my mind in watching all this is we could be doing this 3 more times. We could be doing it with the January 6th. We could be doing it with the Georgia situation. And we could do it with Mar-a-Lago, which is heating up like you wouldn't believe. They are now making Secret Service testify. They make his own attorney, Corcoran, he has to testify his own client.
Well,
what is it? Jack Smith is somehow rocket fueled to get Trump in a way that I can't believe people aren't challenging this and saying, even if I don't like Donald Trump, what's going on here?
Because of the crime, we've talked about this, the crime fraud exemption. If you get legal advice during the execution of a crime,
but it almost never happens.
It happens more than you would believe.
Talk to Mark Levin about that.
Your attorney-client privilege goes out the window. Regarding the Secret Service,
how many times has it happened? It's nuts. You have an attorney and Secret Service, and you flip them?
I am just talking about what is the law. That is the law.
Rarely used.
That is, well, it was used in this case.
No
kidding. The other thing is, I feel like it's open to mic night. I'm getting heckled over here.
No, I'm not heckling you. I'm just saying it's so ludicrous that you can tell your attorney your secrets. And then
Brian brought up a couple of points. I just want to explain the law. So you got
I know the
crime-
law. I'm
crime-
just saying it almost never happens, so it doesn't matter what the law says.
right,
It almost never happens, and they're targeting a former president. This guy, Jack Smith, is out of his mind with aggression.
Well, here's the thing. Regarding the Secret Service agents, if they witnessed a crime, there would be an expectation that they would tell the crime.
Really? So JFK, the Secret Service that saw JFK having as many trysts, the ones
that's
that
what-
witnessed Monica Lewinsky in the Oval Office. You go, where was that
you're just
Secret
talking
Service
the
being
double
hauled
standard,
in?
the double standard
triple,
here.
quadruple
Yeah.
standard in American history.
Laura Trump was on with Sean last night, and she basically said the same thing. We're treating Republicans differently than we treat Democrats. Look what happened with Hillary Clinton. She gets slapped with a fine. Nothing happens to her. Donald Trump's being thrown into different courtrooms all over the country now for
Right.
basically doing the same thing.
And my point is there are laws on the books
Yes.
that are making this possible. Laura Trump says ultimately this is a waste of
How much
your,
is this costing us?
Yeah, a waste of your taxpayer money.
To see the entire New York Police Department in full force, mobilized, lining the streets. I mean, this must have cost the taxpayers of New York tens of millions of dollars. Over what? Over $130,000 completely legal non-disclosure agreement payment. You know, these things happen all day, every day in the United States of America. And the sad part is that Alvin Bragg, of course, the district attorney there in Manhattan, is supposed to be locking up criminals, supposed to be keeping the streets of New York safe. Yet this is where all of the energy, focus, and taxpayer money is going. We know their investigation has been years long into my father-in-law. They've been trying to find anything possible on him.
And look at the Joe Biden investigation. Have we heard anything about the documents? They went to his lawyer's his office in Boston. What'd they find? They go to his University of Delaware, took out hundreds of boxes. What did they find? What about the boxes at the Penn Center? We saw a couple of dozen documents there. What about what they found in his garage? And then everything just goes silent because I guess there's nobody who's leaking from the Biden investigation, but it looks like Jack Smith wrote the column for the Washington Post 2 days ago. I mean, people should be outraged by this.
Well, ultimately, it is still an open investigation, and that seems to be what's going on there. Brian, you mentioned the January 6th thing, the Georgia thing, the Mar-a-Lago thing. Keep in mind, here in New York State, the Attorney General is going after the former president for, I think, $250 million worth of corruption. And then there is a possibility, actually it's on the books, the rape trial is supposed to start in 2 weeks.
Look, if he's convicted, there's nothing in the Constitution that prevents him from running for president. I think he'll still run. You just have to be an American citizen. You have to live here for 14 years. Yeah, and have to be over 35 years old. I think he will run.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.